Why do some people say they want a better life for years and still stay in the same place? Why do others move slowly on the surface, yet somehow become stronger, calmer, wiser, and more successful year after year? Why can two people want similar things, live through similar seasons, and still end up with very different lives? Most people answer those questions the wrong way. They point to luck, timing, talent, background, opportunity, or one major event. They look for one dramatic cause because dramatic causes are easy to notice. A breakthrough looks powerful. A crisis looks powerful. A big decision looks powerful. But most lives are not built by what happens once. They are built by what happens repeatedly. That is the truth behind this book. Your life is not being shaped mainly by what you dream about from time to time. It is being shaped by what you repeat day after day. Success is rarely a miracle. Failure is rarely an accident. Both are usually the visible result of invisible patterns that have been growing for a long time. The way you speak to yourself, the way you spend your mornings, the way you respond to discomfort, the way you use time, the way you handle money, the way you talk to people, the way you keep or break promises to yourself. None of those choices may look dramatic in a single day. That is why people underestimate them. But repeated long enough, they stop being small. They begin to build identity. They begin to shape character. They begin to create a life. Many people stay stuck because they believe change must begin with a powerful emotional moment. They think they need a perfect plan, a perfect season, a surge of motivation, or the right conditions before they can really begin. But that belief becomes a polite form of delay. It keeps them waiting for a future version of life in which everything finally feels ready. Meanwhile, the future is already being built by the way they live today. That misunderstanding quietly steals years from people. They think they are waiting to begin, but they have already begun. Everyone is already building a life. The only real question is this: what kind of life is being built by what you keep repeating? Your daily actions are casting votes for the person you are becoming. Every repeated choice says something. Every pattern moves you in a direction. Every day either strengthens disorder or strengthens alignment. That is why this book does not ask you to chase extreme transformation. It does not ask you to become a different person overnight. It does not ask you to rebuild everything in one burst of intensity. It asks for something more realistic and far more powerful. It asks you to build a new life through a new way of living, one small, repeated action at a time. This book will walk you through that process in 5 clear stages. First, you will wake up from the illusion that life changes in one dramatic night. Then, you will rebuild your inner foundation by changing the way you think and the way you communicate. After that, you will learn to lead yourself through discipline time and learning. Then, you will create upward momentum through money and personal growth. Finally, you will anchor everything in purpose and gratitude. So your progress becomes both strong and sustainable. This is not a book about temporary motivation. It is a book about replacing an unstable way of living with a stronger one. It is about moving from vague desire to repeated action, from self-blame to self-leadership, from reacting to life to shaping it. You do not need to fix your whole life today. You do not need a heroic version of yourself by tonight. You only need enough honesty to see the real pattern and enough courage to begin changing it in small ways that can actually last. That is where real change begins. Not in a fantasy of total reinvention, but in a new standard repeated until it becomes part of who you are. You do not need a dramatic transformation in one night. You need a new way of living, small enough to begin and solid enough to repeat. Chapter 1. You do not change your life overnight. People love the idea of sudden transformation. They love the story of one decision, one breakthrough, one lucky moment that changes everything by tomorrow morning. Why? Because fast change feels exciting. It feels dramatic. It feels clean. It saves us from the long, quiet, often boring process of becoming better day by day. We want the visible result without the invisible repetition behind it. We want confidence without the uncomfortable practice that builds it. We want success without the discipline that can hold it. We want a new life, but we do not always want the daily structure that creates one. And that is exactly why so many people stay stuck. They are not lazy in the way they think. They are not hopeless in the way they fear. They are simply attached to the wrong model of change. They keep waiting for an emotional moment to save them, and then they wonder why nothing lasts. But what if the real problem is not your lack of desire? What if the real problem is that you were taught to expect change to feel big before it becomes real? Real change usually does not begin with fireworks. It begins with a small decision repeated after the excitement is gone. It begins when you do the right thing, even though the result is still too small to impress anyone. It begins when you stop asking life to reward your intentions and start building a life through what you actually do each day. Success does not arrive like a gift. It grows like a pattern. It is not made in one giant act. It is built through a chain of choices that look ordinary while they are happening. A person does not become wiser because of one inspiring quote. They become wiser because they read 10 pages a day. Think about what they read and keep going long after the mood has passed. A person does not become financially strong because they felt motivated for 1 month. They become financially strong because they spend less than they earn, track where their money goes, and repeat that behavior until stability becomes part of their character. A person does not become respected because they gave one good speech. They become respected because over time they learn to speak more calmly, listen more carefully, and respond with more maturity than before. This is how life actually changes, not through one loud promise, but through one repeated standard. The people who move forward are usually not the people who feel inspired every day. They are the people who keep returning to what is right, even when what is right still feels small. That is the part most people resist. Small actions seem too small to matter. But that is because we judge actions by their immediate emotional effect, not by their long-term accumulated power. A single page does not look like knowledge. A single saved dollar does not look like freedom. A single calm conversation does not look like influence. But repeated long enough, those small acts stop being small. They begin to shape identity. They begin to change what you can handle, what you can attract, and what kind of life you are able to sustain. This is not only true for success, it is also true for failure. Failure rarely appears all at once. It usually arrives quietly. It grows through small errors in judgment, repeated often enough to become normal. A negative attitude repeated every morning changes the way you see people, pressure, and possibility. Delay repeated every afternoon teaches your mind that avoidance is easier than action. A lack of discipline repeated across weeks becomes a life in which intentions are always stronger than results. Careless spending repeated month after month turns a rising income into the same old stress. None of those choices destroys a life in one day. That is why people underestimate them. But over time, they wear a person down. They weaken confidence. They create disorder. They turn potential into frustration. What looks like a broken life is often a slow accumulation of broken patterns. This is why your daily choices matter more than your dramatic promises. This is why your repeated standard matters more than your temporary mood. And this is why you must stop asking the wrong question. Most people ask, how can I become successful fast? It sounds ambitious, but it creates a dangerous way of living. It trains you to chase outcomes before you are ready to build the structure that can support them. It keeps your eyes on the prize while your habits remain weak. It makes you hunger for a destination while neglecting the person who has to get there. A better question is quieter but much more powerful. What do I need to improve a little today? That question changes everything. It pulls you out of fantasy and into process. It shifts your attention away from performance and back to practice. It moves you from waiting to building. It teaches you to respect the small. It reminds you that life does not rise because of what you wish for once. It rises because of what you repeat with intention. This is the turning point. The goal is not to chase success as if it is running away from you. The goal is to become the kind of person success can stay with. Success is not something you hunt down. It is something you attract by the way you think, choose, speak, work, and live. It is the natural response to stronger character, a steadier mind, a more disciplined life, and a more mature way of handling responsibility. If you want a new result, there must be a new person standing behind it. You cannot ask life for more while staying exactly the same. You cannot demand a bigger future with the same daily standards that created your current one. You do not need to beg life to give you more. You need to raise yourself so you can carry more. That is the real work. Not pretending to be transformed overnight, but becoming transformed through what you repeat daily. So let this be your decision. Stop waiting for the perfect moment. Stop worshiping motivation as if it will rescue you. Stop thinking your life will change because you felt something deeply for one night. Feelings can begin movement, but they cannot carry a life. Discipline does that. Repetition does that. Daily correction does that. The direction of your life will follow the direction of your repeated choices. That is true whether you respect it or not. The good news is that this law is not against you. It can work for you. You do not need one magical night to become someone new. You need enough ordinary days lived differently. Enough mornings when you choose the better thought. Enough afternoons when you do the task instead of delaying it. Enough evenings when you keep one promise to yourself. Day by day, those choices begin to add up. Then, one day, what once felt impossible begins to feel natural. Not because a miracle happened, but because you changed the pattern. No night suddenly turns you into a new person. Only days lived differently can do that. And when those days are repeated long enough, they gather into a different life. Chapter 2. If you want a better life. Start with the way you think. Many people want a better life, but they keep trying to change only what can be seen. They want better results, better habits, better opportunities, better relationships, better income, better confidence. But they do not start with the place where all of those things begin. They do not start with the way they think. And that is why so many sincere efforts collapse after a short time. The outside may look new for a moment, but the inside keeps pulling everything back into the old pattern. How can a person build a stronger life with a mind that keeps speaking the language of defeat? How can someone move forward if their inner voice keeps telling them to stay small, stay safe, and stay the same? A better life cannot be built on an inner system that keeps weakening the person trying to build it. This is where real change becomes more honest. Before you change your actions at a deep level, you must examine the attitude, mindset, and beliefs that stand behind those actions. Attitude is the first gate of change. Two people can face the same problem and walk away with very different futures. One sees only insult, pressure, and bad luck. The other sees discomfort, yes, but also a lesson, a warning, a place to grow. The situation may be the same, but the interpretation is different. And interpretation shapes response. Response shapes behavior. Behavior repeated over time shapes life. That is why attitude is not a small thing. It is not decoration. It is not a motivational accessory. It is a directional force. Your attitude decides whether difficulty becomes fuel or poison. A positive attitude does not mean pretending everything is easy. It does not mean denying pain, ignoring loss, or smiling through every disappointment. That would not be strength. That would be avoidance. A healthy attitude means choosing the most useful response instead of the most automatic one. It means asking, "What can this teach me?" instead of only saying, "Why is this happening to me?" It means refusing to let one bad moment become the lens through which you read your whole life. People who look at life through helplessness become passive even when options are still available. People who learn to look for responsibility, meaning, and next steps become stronger even before their circumstances improve. That is why your mindset matters so much. Mindset shapes vision, and vision shapes choice. The person who sees only problems usually stops at complaint. The person who trains their mind to look for solutions becomes more active, more creative, and more resilient. Mindset is not abstract. It shows itself in daily thought. It appears in how you talk to yourself after a mistake. It appears in what you believe is possible. It appears in whether you treat growth as a process or your current limits as a permanent identity. Some people say, "This is just who I am." It sounds honest, but many times it is only surrender, dressed as self-acceptance. Some say, "I am not disciplined. I am not good with people. I have never been confident. I do not have talent for that." But what are those sentences really doing? Are they telling the truth, or are they protecting an old self from the discomfort of becoming new? This is where limiting beliefs do more damage than most people realize. They are invisible cages. They do not need to be true to be powerful. They only need to be repeated. I am not good enough. People like me do not succeed. I always quit. I cannot change. At first, they sound like thoughts. Then they become conclusions. Then they become permissions to live beneath your real capacity. This is how a person shrinks without anyone forcing them to. They repeat a sentence often enough, and then they start obeying it. A belief can become a command long before it becomes a fact. That is why you must pay attention to the way you speak inside your own mind. Your outer life often begins with your inner language. If you keep saying, "I cannot do this," your brain stops looking for ways forward. If you keep saying, "This is hard, but I can learn something," changes immediately. The pressure may not vanish, but possibility returns. The door opens again. Growth begins again. Rebuilding your thinking does not require fake positivity. It requires honest correction. Start by noticing the sentences you repeat to yourself most often. What do you say when things go wrong? What do you say when you feel behind? What do you say when you compare yourself to someone else? Those sentences matter because they are either training you to rise or training you to retreat. Then, test them. Are they facts or are they habits of mind? "I cannot do this" is usually not a fact. More often, it means "I cannot do this yet," or "I do not know how yet," or "I feel uncomfortable because I am learning." That small word "yet" matters more than many people understand. It turns identity into process. It turns a wall into a road. It turns self-condemnation into direction. Instead of saying, "I always fail," say, "I have failed before, but I can respond differently now." Instead of saying, "I am not built for discipline," say, "I have not trained discipline enough yet." Instead of saying, "I am bad at this," say, "I am still getting better at this." This is not wordplay. This is mental leadership. You are not trying to flatter yourself. You are trying to lead yourself. That is the real shift. The goal is not to feel perfect. The goal is to guide yourself in the right direction every day. Mature people do not wait until their mood improves before they live correctly. They choose a better thought because a better thought leads to a better response, and a better response repeated over time builds a better life. Think of the person who receives one piece of negative feedback and immediately collapses inside. They do not just hear the feedback. They hear an old belief saying, "See, you were never good enough." Think of the person who keeps saying, "I am just not the kind of person who can stay consistent." They are not only describing themselves, they are programming themselves. And think of the person who changes direction simply by changing the way they speak within. They stop saying, "What is wrong with me?" and start asking, "What is the next right step?" That one shift can change the emotional climate of an entire life. Because once the voice inside changes, the choices outside begin to change too. And when the choices change, the pattern changes. And when the pattern changes, life begins to follow. Your outer life starts changing when your inner language stops pulling you backward. That is why, if you want a better life, you must begin with the way you think. You do not need to lie to yourself. You need to stop speaking to yourself like an enemy. You do not need to become impressive overnight. You need to become more truthful, more intentional, and more constructive in the place where all action begins. The life you build tomorrow is already being shaped by the voice you follow today. Change that voice, and you begin to change your life. Chapter 3. The way you speak opens or closes your life. Many people think communication is a secondary skill. They treat it like a nice extra something useful for confident people, leaders, salespeople, or public speakers. But ordinary life keeps proving the opposite. Communication is not extra. It is one of the main ways your inner world touches the outer world. It affects trust, conflict, opportunity, influence, love, teamwork, respect, and the doors that open or close around you. How many good intentions are damaged because they were expressed poorly? How many capable people remain unseen because they cannot clearly carry their value into a conversation? How many relationships become heavy, not because love is absent, but because understanding is weak? Many doors in life do not stay closed because you lack ability. They stay closed because you have not yet learned how to let people feel your clarity, your maturity, and your value. Good communication does not begin with the mouth. It begins with listening. Most people listen only long enough to prepare their reply. They are not truly present. They are simply waiting for their turn. But listening to answer and listening to understand are not the same thing. When you listen to understand, something changes immediately. You slow down. You stop assuming. You give the other person room to exist beyond your first interpretation, and that alone prevents many avoidable wounds. People who know how to listen well are often trusted more than people who speak impressively. Why? Because being heard is one of the deepest forms of respect. When someone feels understood, resistance softens, defensiveness drops, cooperation becomes easier. Listening is not passive, It is one of the strongest forms of presence. It reduces misunderstanding before misunderstanding grows teeth, and small misunderstandings matter more than people think. Most large cracks in relationships begin as small communication errors repeated over time. A vague sentence, a quick reaction, an assumption left untested, a conversation avoided too long, a truth delivered with unnecessary force, a hurt feeling never clarified. At first, those moments look minor, but repeated often enough, they create distance. They create tension. They make people feel unsafe with each other. This happens at home, at work, in friendship, and even inside a person's relationship with themselves. Communication problems rarely begin as explosions. They usually begin as small misalignments that nobody takes seriously until trust starts to thin out. That is why better communication can improve a life faster than many people expect. Good communication builds trust. It resolves conflict earlier. It increases influence. It makes collaboration easier. It strengthens leadership. It improves persuasion, not because you become manipulative, but because you become clearer and calmer. The world responds differently to people who are easy to understand and safe to engage with. A person may have talent, good intentions, and a strong work ethic, but if they speak vaguely, react impulsively, or fail to understand others, many opportunities will slip away. Not because they are bad, not because people are cruel, but because communication is how value travels. If your value cannot travel clearly, it often cannot reach the places it deserves to reach. So how do you improve it? Not through performance, through daily practice. Start by learning to speak more clearly and with fewer words. Many people talk too much when they are uncertain. They add extra words because they hope more words will create more power. Usually the opposite happens. Clear speech is stronger than crowded speech. Say what matters. Mean what you say. Let your words carry direction, not confusion. Then learn to tell the truth without turning truth into a weapon. Some people stay silent to avoid conflict. Others become harsh and call it honesty. Neither is maturity. Mature communication can be direct without being violent. It can be honest without humiliating. It can set a boundary without creating unnecessary damage. This takes practice, but it changes everything. Also, train yourself to pause before reacting. Not every emotion deserves immediate expression. A quick reaction often says more about your lack of regulation than about the problem itself. Calmness does not make you weak. It gives your words more weight in the best way. When you speak after thinking, people listen differently. Your words carry stability. Your message lands better. Your relationships become less chaotic. Another simple practice is to ask more questions, not as a trick, but as a discipline of understanding. What did you mean by that? Can you help me understand? So what I hear you saying is this. Am I right? Those small questions save many conversations from unnecessary damage. They prove that you care more about truth than ego. They also help you catch misunderstanding before misunderstanding becomes conflict. Good communicators do not assume they understood. They check. That habit alone can protect families, friendships, and careers. Think about a family misunderstanding. One person says something carelessly. Another hears something more painful than what was intended. Neither slows down enough to clarify. Pride enters, silence grows, distance follows. Or think about work. A task is explained vaguely. No one asks for clarity. The result is poor. Frustration rises. Trust weakens. None of that started with a lack of talent. It started with weak communication. Now think of the person who does not talk the most in the room, yet people trust them. Why? Because they listen carefully, they speak clearly, they do not rush to defend themselves, they ask thoughtful questions, they create calm instead of confusion. Such a person quietly becomes influential because people feel safe around their words. That safety is power. That clarity is opportunity. Communication, then, is not only a skill. It is part of who you are becoming. A calm, clear, honest, and attentive person will attract better opportunities than someone equally capable but emotionally messy in speech. The way you talk becomes part of the way the world reads your character. It tells people whether you are grounded, whether you can be trusted, whether you are mature enough for responsibility, whether you can lead, whether you can collaborate, whether you can carry pressure without causing more damage than help. That is why improving communication is not cosmetic. It is structural. It changes how relationships feel. It changes how conflict gets handled. It changes how opportunity reaches you. And like everything else in this book, it changes through small repetitions. A calmer response, a clearer sentence, a better question, a few more seconds of listening, one less defensive reaction. Those things look small, but they stop being small when repeated. They slowly change the atmosphere around you. They make your life less full of friction and more full of trust. So do not underestimate the way you speak. Your words are not only sounds, they are signals. They tell the world how safe you are, how clear you are, and how ready you are for bigger things. When your communication becomes more mature, your life does not only become less painful, it begins to open. Chapter 4. You do not need more willpower. You need daily discipline. Many people think their problem is a lack of determination. They say they need to want it more. Try harder, push themselves further, or wait until they feel stronger inside. But is that really the problem? If desire were enough, more people would already be living the life they keep talking about. If wanting something deeply were enough, good intentions would have turned into good results long ago. The truth is harder, but it is also more useful. Most people do not fail because they do not care. They fail because they do not have a system strong enough to carry their care into daily action. They begin with fire, but they do not know how to keep moving after the fire fades. They start strong on Monday, lose rhythm by Wednesday, and by the weekend they are already negotiating with themselves again. They do not lack ambition. They lack a structure that can survive ordinary days. That is why discipline matters so much. Discipline is not punishment. It is not self-hatred. It is not the art of being harsh with yourself. Discipline is the ability to do what matters even when your emotions are not helping you. It is the ability to stay loyal to what is important instead of becoming a servant to what is immediate. That is why discipline is more trustworthy than motivation. Motivation can help you begin. Discipline decides whether you arrive. Motivation is emotional. Discipline is structural. Motivation rises and falls with sleep stress, weather mood, praise, and disappointment. Discipline does not ask how you feel first. It asks what matters first. That is the shift many people need. If you live by mood, your progress will always be broken. If you live by standard, your life begins to stabilize. Think about the person who says they want to get healthier. They feel inspired after watching a video, hearing a speech, or seeing someone else transform. For 2 days, they eat better, move more, and feel proud. Then work gets busy. Their energy drops. Their routine breaks. And because they were depending on emotion, the whole effort begins to collapse. Now, think of another person. They may not be dramatic. They may not look intensely motivated. But every day they walk for 15 minutes. Every day they drink more water. Every day they eat with a little more awareness. None of that looks impressive at first. But months later, one person has stories. The other has results. This is the difference between emotional effort and disciplined repetition. Discipline at its simplest means doing the needed thing, even when you do not feel like doing it. It means getting up when staying in bed feels easier. It means finishing the task you started instead of abandoning it because the excitement is gone. It means staying with the boring middle, not just loving the exciting beginning. And that is where many people lose. They can tolerate intensity but not repetition. They can survive a burst but not a rhythm. Yet life does not change through bursts. It changes through rhythm. The boring part is not the enemy. The boring part is where identity is built. So how do you build discipline in a human way? Not by demanding a heroic version of yourself every morning. Not by trying to rebuild your whole life in one dramatic week. Discipline grows from small structures. Wake up a little earlier. Finish one important task before opening the flood of distractions. Read 10 pages. Walk 15 minutes. Write 1 page. Keep 1 promise. Those actions are small on purpose. Why? Because the first goal of discipline is not intensity. It is consistency. The first win is not doing a lot. It is becoming someone who returns. Small, repeated actions teach your mind something powerful. I can trust myself again. That trust matters more than people realize. Every time you promise yourself something and do not follow through, you weaken the relationship with yourself a little more. Every time you say, "I will start tomorrow," and repeat the same delay, you train your mind not to believe your own words. But every time you keep one small commitment, a different identity begins to form. You begin to feel less like someone who hopes and more like someone who acts. That is why discipline does not only improve performance, it rebuilds self-respect. It creates the quiet confidence that comes from knowing you can rely on yourself when it matters. And habits are what make this sustainable. Do not make yourself decide from zero every single day. That is exhausting. Turn the right action into a ritual. Give it a place. Give it a time. Give it a shape. The more automatic a good behavior becomes, the less inner fighting it requires. A person who always reads before bed does not need a fresh argument every night. A person who always plans the next day before sleeping does not need to improvise every morning. A person who always walks after lunch reduces the need for negotiation. Habits protect discipline from emotional chaos. They lower the cost of doing the right thing. Many people overestimate the importance of strength and underestimate the importance of setup. They think successful people are simply more driven. Often, they are simply more structured. They remove unnecessary decisions. They reduce friction. They make good behavior easier to repeat. This is not weakness. It is wisdom. A disciplined life is not a life of constant struggle. It is a life designed so the right things happen more often. Consider 2 people. One is talented, intelligent, and full of potential, but they stop and restart everything. They begin many things and finish few. They always wait to feel ready. The other person is less naturally gifted, less dramatic, less impressive at first glance. But they keep going. They keep reading. They keep learning. They keep showing up. Months pass, then years. Who goes further? Usually not the person with more natural fire, but the person with more repeatable order. Talent can open a door. Discipline is what keeps you walking through it. So if your life feels stuck, do not immediately conclude that something is wrong with your dreams. Ask a better question. What daily discipline is missing between who you are now and who you want to become? Is it a wake-up routine, a reading habit, a limit on distractions, a commitment to finish what you start? You do not need 10 new rules. Start with one. Choose one discipline small enough to keep for 7 days. Do not increase it too early. Do not turn it into a performance. Your first goal is not perfection. Your first goal is continuity. Let the action become familiar. Let repetition build identity. Let one kept promise repair the trust between you and yourself. Life does not change because you make bigger speeches to yourself. It changes because you keep one right thing long enough for it to become part of your character. That is the real power of discipline. It does not just help you get more done. It helps you become someone stronger, steadier, and more trustworthy from the inside out. Chapter 5. Is your day slipping away or is it moving you forward? A lot of people end the day tired and still feel they got nowhere. They were active from morning to evening. They answered messages, handled small tasks, reacted to requests, solved minor problems, and stayed mentally busy the whole time. Yet when the day is over, one question remains: what actually moved forward? This is one of the most common traps in modern life. Being busy creates the feeling of movement, but feeling movement and making progress are not the same. You can fill a day and still waste it. You can be occupied and still drift. You can be exhausted and still remain in the same place. Why? Because not every effort has direction. Not every activity deserves to be called progress. Real progress begins when a day is used on purpose. Time management, then, is not mainly about squeezing more into the calendar. It is about deciding what matters enough to deserve your energy first. Most people do not only have a time problem, they have a priority problem. They say they do not have enough time, but very often what they really lack is a clear decision about what the day is for. When that decision is missing, other things rush in and take over. Messages become masters. Noise becomes routine. Small demands steal the space that should have gone to meaningful work. This is how people slowly build a life full of motion but empty of momentum. A good day usually does not begin with urgency. It begins with clarity. What are the 3 most important things that need to move today? Not 15. Not everything. Just the few that truly matter. That question pulls you out of scattered living. It forces you to separate what is loud from what is important. And that separation changes everything. When you know the priority, you can protect it. When you do not know the priority, everything feels equally urgent. And that is how important work keeps getting pushed aside. The most valuable part of many days is often lost, not because the task is impossible, but because distraction gets there first. That is why a strong day needs structure. Start with a short plan. Nothing complicated, just enough to decide what matters before the world starts speaking too loudly. Then do the most important work first, while your mind is fresher and your energy is less broken. Remove the biggest distraction before it removes you. For some people, that means putting the phone away. For others, it means closing unnecessary tabs, leaving a noisy room, or setting a fixed block of focus time. Then build in short recovery, because rest is not the enemy of discipline. Collapses. A structured day also ends well. Before sleeping, take a few minutes to review. What moved? What got delayed? What needs to lead tomorrow? That brief review prevents life from becoming one long, unexamined blur. It helps you live with intention instead of reaction. But there is another quiet force that shapes the speed of your life learning. A day is not only for doing, it is also for becoming. The world changes quickly, tools change, industries change, expectations change, opportunities change. A person who stops learning does not stay where they are, they slowly lose ground. Formal education may help you earn a living, but self-education helps you expand the life you are able to build. Knowledge increases value. It sharpens judgment. It improves decisions. It opens doors that may not even be visible yet. That is why self-learning should not be treated like a luxury. It is part of a serious life. The good news is that learning does not need to look grand. It can be simple and steady. Read a few pages each day. Listen to something strong while commuting. Write down one useful idea. Apply one small lesson quickly. Learn to use knowledge, not just collect it. Many people consume information the way others consume entertainment. They feel productive because they are always watching, listening, saving, highlighting, and scrolling through advice. But learning that never changes behavior becomes another kind of noise. It fills the head while leaving life untouched. The point of learning is not to feel busy. The point of learning is to become more capable. That is why one idea applied is often worth more than 10 ideas admired. Imagine one person who spends every day reacting. They wake up without a plan. They check everything immediately. They spend the day putting out small fires and touching many things without finishing what matters most. They are busy, but they are not building. Now imagine another person. Their day is not perfect. It is not glamorous, but they know what matters. They do the important work earlier. They protect time from distraction. They review the day. They also read 10 pages, listen to something useful, or practice one skill a little more. After one day, the difference looks small. After 6 months, it does not look small at all. One life is being spent, the other is being invested. That is the distinction you must begin to respect. Time is not only something you pass through, it is something that is shaping you while you use it. And knowledge is not only something you gather, it should increase your ability to live, choose, and create at a higher level. So ask yourself, honestly, is your day carrying you somewhere, or is it only consuming you? Are you reacting all day, or are you directing at least part of your life? Are you only working, or are you also becoming more valuable? You do not need a perfect routine to change this. You need a more intentional one. Plan briefly. Choose clearly. Do important work early. Cut one major distraction. Learn something useful every day. Apply one piece. Review before sleep. Those actions are not dramatic, but they are powerful because they turn a day into a lever. And once your days begin to work for you instead of against you, your life begins to rise in a very different way. A day does not move you upward by accident. It moves you upward when you use your time and your mind with purpose. Do that often enough and your ordinary days will stop slipping away. They will start building the future you keep saying you want. Chapter 6. Money does not only pay for life, it shapes your future. Many people think money problems will disappear the moment they earn more. They imagine that a higher salary, a better deal, a larger client, or one lucky break will finally bring peace. But does more income automatically create security? Does a bigger number solve a pattern that has never been corrected? Again and again, life gives the same answer. More money can help, but more money alone does not fix disorder. A person can earn well and still live near the edge of stress. A person can increase their income and still feel trapped at the end of every month. Why? Because financial pressure is not only an income problem. Very often it is a pattern problem. It is a management problem. It is a maturity problem. It is the result of what a person repeatedly does with money, not just what they occasionally receive. That is why money must be understood more deeply. Money is not only something you spend. It is something that reveals how you think, how you choose, and how seriously you take your future. Many people do not like to hear that. They want money to feel external, like a force separate from character. But money quietly exposes many things. It exposes whether you can delay pleasure. It exposes whether you know where your resources are going. It exposes whether you can live below your means when your ego wants to display more. It exposes whether you think only about this week or whether you can protect next year. In that sense, money is one of the clearest tests of self-control. A person who cannot manage small amounts usually will not manage large amounts wisely either. The scale may change, but the pattern often stays the same. That is why the idea "I will handle money better when I have more" is dangerous. If your current habits are careless, more income can simply make carelessness more expensive. If you spend to soothe emotion now, you may still spend to soothe emotion later, only with larger consequences. If you avoid looking at your numbers now, you may still avoid them when the numbers get bigger. The real change is not only in earning. It is in becoming the kind of person who can direct money instead of being directed by it. So where does that begin? It begins with a simple but often uncomfortable question. Do you know where your money is going? Not roughly, not emotionally, clearly. Many people work hard for their income but have only a foggy idea of how it disappears. Small purchases, impulsive spending, automatic renewals, social spending for image, random convenience habits, none of those may look destructive on their own, but repeated over time they quietly drain strength from the future. This is how money slips away, not always through one big mistake, but through many unexamined ones. That is why awareness must come first. Before you can change your financial life, you must stop treating your money like something mysterious. Track it, look at it, face it without drama. Clarity is not punishment, it is power. Once you know where your money goes, the next step is to tell it where to go. That is what a simple budget really is. It is not a prison, it is a plan. It is a way of making sure your values and your spending are not fighting each other all month. A budget does not need to be complicated, it only needs to be honest. What must be covered? What should be reduced? What deserves priority? What must stop pretending to be small? Many people resist budgeting because they think it will make life feel tight. In reality, the lack of structure is what creates silent pressure. Disorder feels free at first, then expensive later. Order may feel restrictive for a moment, but it creates breathing room. Another core principle is this: keep part of what you earn before you get used to spending all of it. That sounds simple, but it changes everything. Most people spend first and hope something will remain. Usually little remains because spending expands easily to match income. That is why saving cannot be left to chance. It must become a repeated act of loyalty to your future self. Put something aside first, even if it starts small. The amount matters less than the pattern at the beginning. Why? Because the habit teaches you that your future is not an afterthought. It deserves a portion before the present consumes everything. Then, over time, saving should grow into something more intentional. Money that only sits without purpose is safer than chaos, but money that is saved and invested steadily begins to work differently. It begins to create options. It begins to create distance between you and panic. It begins to turn effort into long-term support. You do not need a miracle for this. You need repetition. A small amount saved consistently is more powerful than a large amount saved once and forgotten. A modest investment repeated with patience is stronger than waiting for one dramatic financial win. Stable finances are rarely built by surprise. They are built by rhythm. This is where many people miss the real power of small improvement. Cutting one unconscious spending habit may look minor, but repeated across a year, it can change more than expected. Cooking more often, instead of constantly buying convenience, canceling what you do not use. Pausing before impulse purchases, setting a limit for unnecessary spending. Tracking a category that always leaks money. Those are not glamorous moves, but they are effective because they attack the pattern. And once the pattern changes, the future begins to change with it. Think about two people. One earns a high income, but they never know where it goes. They spend to feel better, spend to keep up, spend because they are tired, and spend because structure feels boring. On paper, they look successful. In reality, they remain fragile. Then think about another person. Their income may be more modest, but they track their money, save first, spend with intention, and think beyond this month. They may look less impressive from the outside, but inside, their life becomes steadier. Which person is actually building freedom? Usually not the one earning more, but the one managing better. That is why money is tied so closely to personal character. Financial health reflects discipline. It reflects priorities. It reflects responsibility. It reflects whether a person can say no to the immediate so they can say yes to the important. Managing money well does not mean worshiping money. It means refusing to let carelessness weaken your future. It means treating money as a tool that should support your life, not as a force that keeps controlling your peace. So if you want a stronger financial future, do not begin only with the dream of earning more. Begin with a more honest and powerful decision. Learn where your money goes. Build a simple plan. Save before spending. Invest steadily. Spend less than you earn. Repeat those principles long enough for them to become part of your identity, because your financial future will not be decided mainly by the few moments when you earn a lot. It will be decided by what you repeatedly do with money every day and every month. Money does not only show what you can buy now, it shows how responsibly you are building what comes next. Chapter 7. If you want a better life, you must grow first. Many people want a better life, but they focus almost entirely on what they want to have. They want better work, better relationships, better income, better peace, better recognition, better opportunities. But a harder question waits underneath all of that. Have you grown enough to carry what you are asking for? That question matters because many people do not fail only from lack of opportunity. They fail because their current inner capacity cannot hold the very life they say they want. They want more responsibility without more discipline. They want better relationships without greater emotional maturity. They want stronger careers without stronger skills. They want larger opportunities while still reacting with the habits of a smaller self. That is where self-sabotage begins. Life gives them something bigger, but they do not yet have the steadiness, clarity, or strength to hold it well. So the very thing they wanted begins to slip through their hands. That is why personal growth is not a slogan. It is not just consuming more content, collecting more quotes, or talking about becoming your best self. Real personal growth is more demanding than that. It is not only adding knowledge, it is also removing what keeps damaging your life. It is not only improving skills, it is also understanding yourself more honestly. It is not only becoming more capable on the outside, it is also becoming more stable, more mature, and more responsible on the inside. Growth means increasing your capacity to think better, feel better, decide better, endure better, communicate better, and act better. It means the person standing behind your goals is becoming stronger than before. That is the real work. Many people want results larger than their present capacity. They want leadership, but they still collapse under pressure. They want influence, but they cannot regulate their emotions in conflict. They want healthy love, but they still carry habits that create insecurity, pride, or avoidance. They want a better career, but they have not built the skills required for a better level of work. This is not judgment. It is simply reality. A better life asks more from you, not less. It asks for greater character, not just greater desire. It asks for more internal order, not just bigger ambition. That is why wanting more is not enough. You must also become more. This shift changes the whole direction of self-improvement. Many people approach growth through comparison. They look sideways all the time. Who is ahead? Who is doing better? Who has more? Who looks more successful? But comparison is a weak foundation for long-term growth. Why? Because it creates movement without meaning. It makes people chase appearances instead of values. It keeps them changing direction based on what looks impressive from the outside. A more sustainable form of progress is growth rooted in what you actually value. What kind of person do you respect? What kind of life do you want to be able to sustain? What qualities do you believe matter even when nobody is watching? Those questions bring depth back into the journey. When your growth is tied to values, it becomes more stable. You are no longer improving only to keep up. You are improving because you know what matters. Then your goals stop feeling empty. They stop being only about status. They become connected to identity and meaning. This is why progress that lasts is value-based progress. A person who values responsibility grows differently from someone who only values image. A person who values wisdom grows differently from someone who only values attention. A person who values contribution grows differently from someone who only values admiration. Values create direction. Direction creates coherence. And coherence makes growth feel less random and less exhausting. Personal growth also becomes healthier when you understand that it is a lifelong process, not a finish line. There is no point where you are finally done becoming. Each season of life asks for a wiser version of you. A new level of work asks for new discipline. A new relationship asks for deeper emotional skill. A new challenge asks for stronger thinking. The people who go furthest are not the people who become perfect. They are the people who keep upgrading themselves instead of defending old limitations. They remain teachable. They remain honest. They remain willing to outgrow what used to define them. That is why growth is not about arriving at some flawless identity. It is about refusing to stay smaller than you need to be. So how should a reader practice this in real life? Start simply. Choose one ability that needs to rise. Maybe it is communication. Maybe it is emotional control. Maybe it is consistency. Maybe it is financial management. Then choose one old habit that keeps pulling your life downward. Not 10. 1. Remove friction where you can, but also tell the truth about the pattern. Then, choose one goal connected to your values, not just your ego. Something that would make your life more aligned, not just more impressive. And finally, track progress weekly instead of attacking yourself daily. Growth is easier to respect when you look for direction, not instant perfection. A week tells the truth better than one emotional day. Think about the professional who is highly skilled but lacks self-awareness. Their technical ability may carry them for a while, but eventually their blind spots begin to damage trust. Think about the person who wants to lead but has never learned how to listen, regulate emotion, or communicate with steadiness. Position alone will not make them mature. Or think about someone who slowly transformed their life not through one dramatic change, but through years of steady development. They built better habits. They dropped destructive patterns. They aligned their goals with what mattered. Over time, their whole life changed because they changed first. That is the deeper truth. A better life does not arrive first and then make you grow. Your growth is what opens the way for a better life. So stop asking only, how can I get more? Ask something stronger. Who do I need to become to hold more well? That question moves you out of fantasy and into formation. It reminds you that life is not only about chasing results. It is about becoming the kind of person who can sustain them. You do not need to become perfect. You need to keep becoming stronger, wiser, clearer, and more aligned with what matters. Because the life you want will not stay with the version of you that is still too small to carry it. Your growth is not separate from your future. It is the road that leads to it. Chapter 8. If you do not know what you are living for, you will drift easily. Many people improve their habits and still feel strangely empty. They become more disciplined. They manage time better. They learn more. They handle money more wisely. They even become more stable than before. Yet something inside still asks a quiet and uncomfortable question. Why does this still not feel fully right? Why am I doing all of this? Why do I keep moving and still feel like I am missing something important? This is where many people discover a truth they have avoided for a long time. A better life is not only about becoming more efficient, it is also about becoming more aligned. You can become highly functional and still feel disconnected from your deeper reason for living. You can become productive and still feel lost. You can be busy, admired, and even successful by outer standards, yet still feel that your life is somehow moving in a direction that does not truly belong to you. Why does that happen? Because movement is not the same as meaning. Progress is not the same as purpose. And when purpose is unclear, even improvement can start to feel hollow. Many people feel empty not because they are doing nothing, but because they are doing many things without a real inner axis. They wake up, work hard, chase deadlines, solve problems, pay bills, carry responsibilities, and keep moving. From the outside, life may look full. Inside, it can still feel thin. The problem is not always laziness. Often the problem is misalignment. They are active but not anchored. They are doing but not deeply choosing. Their goals were borrowed from comparison pressure or social expectation. They learned what should look impressive before they learned what should feel true. So they keep climbing, but they are not fully sure they are climbing the right mountain. That is why purpose matters so much. Purpose gives direction to effort. It acts like a filter. It helps you decide what deserves your time, your energy, your sacrifice, and your loyalty. Without that filter, almost everything can begin to feel urgent, attractive, or important for a moment. That is how people scatter their lives. They respond to noise instead of direction. They chase opportunities that do not fit. They say yes too often. They keep performing roles that no longer feel honest. And then they wonder why they are tired in a way sleep cannot fix. Purpose is not always one dramatic mission written in the sky. Many people delay clarity because they think purpose must be huge, perfect, and world-changing. They imagine that if they do not have one grand calling, then they have no purpose at all. But that is not true. Purpose does not have to be loud to be real. It can be simple and still be powerful. It can be raising a family well, becoming a trustworthy person, using your skills to create real value, helping people through your work, living with integrity, building something meaningful instead of merely impressive, becoming someone whose life leaves the people around them better, not heavier. The size of the purpose matters less than the honesty of it. What matters is that it gives you a real reason to wake up and continue when life becomes difficult, repetitive, or uncertain. A person with purpose does not magically avoid struggle. They simply suffer differently. Their effort has context. Their sacrifices have direction. Their discipline has a deeper root. That changes everything. When your purpose becomes clearer, small daily actions stop feeling random. Reading is no longer just reading. It becomes preparation. Earning is no longer only about survival. It becomes part of how you support what matters. Rest is no longer laziness. It becomes recovery for a life you actually care about. Boundaries become easier. Priorities become cleaner. Even discomfort becomes easier to tolerate when it is connected to something meaningful. That is why purpose is not separate from daily discipline. It strengthens it. It reminds you why the small actions matter. It protects you from wasting your life on goals that look good but do not fit your soul. So how do you begin to find it? Start by asking more honest questions. What kind of life feels true, not just impressive? What kind of contribution matters to you? What kind of person do you want to be when no one is watching? What pain in the world moves you? What kind of responsibility are you willing to carry? What activities make you feel more alive, more useful, and more connected to something bigger than your comfort? You do not need a perfect answer in one day. You need a direction honest enough to begin shaping your choices, then test it in real life. Purpose becomes clearer through reflection. Yes, but also through action. Serve, build, learn, help, try. Adjust. Pay attention to what gives you a deeper sense of rightness, not just quick reward. Meaning often reveals itself in motion, not only in thought. Purpose also becomes clearer when you protect it in your schedule and let your daily choices prove what truly matters to you. Think of the person who followed every expected path and still felt empty. They studied what looked safe, worked where others approved, chased what sounded successful, and still never felt fully present inside their own life. Then compare that with someone whose purpose may sound smaller on paper, but whose life feels more grounded because it is aligned. They know why they are doing what they are doing. They may still get tired. They may still have doubts. But underneath the struggle there is direction. That direction creates endurance. It creates peace. It creates a more stable form of motivation than emotion alone can ever give. This is why the question of purpose cannot be postponed forever. If you do not know what you are living for, the world will hand you ready-made reasons to stay busy. It will tell you what matters. It will tell you what to chase. It will tell you what success should look like. And if you never examine those messages, you may spend years moving efficiently toward a life that does not actually belong to you. So do not ask only, "How can I improve?" Ask something deeper. What am I improving for? That question lifts the whole book to a new level. It turns self-development into self-direction. It turns discipline into devotion. It turns progress into a path, not just a performance. You do not need all the answers tonight, but you do need enough truth to stop drifting. Because the person who does not know where they are going can spend a whole life running hard and still not reach the place they truly needed to go. Chapter 9. Gratitude does not make you weak, it makes you richer. Inside. Many people think gratitude is soft, passive, or secondary. They treat it like a sweet extra something to remember only after life becomes easier. But gratitude is not weakness, it is not denial, and it is not pretending that pain does not exist. Real gratitude is a strong inner discipline. It changes the way you see your life without requiring you to lie about your struggles. In fact, some of the most exhausted people are not only tired because life is hard. They are tired because their minds have been trained to notice only what is missing. Only what is late, only what is broken, only what still has not happened. And when the mind lives only in lack, even progress begins to feel invisible. Even blessings become normal too quickly. Even achievement feels empty after a short time. This is how people become restless in a life that already contains things they once prayed for. They keep reaching, but they do not know how to receive. They keep improving, but they do not know how to recognize what is already good. They keep demanding more from themselves without ever creating inner room for appreciation. That kind of life becomes hard and sharp even when it looks successful from the outside. Gratitude interrupts that pattern. It shifts the mind from constant scarcity to a deeper sense of abundance. Not fake abundance, not the childish belief that everything is perfect, but the mature awareness that even in an imperfect life, there is still something real to value, something real to learn from, something real to thank life for. This matters more than people realize because your inner world affects how long you can stay on the road of growth. A person who is always harsh with themselves may appear driven for a while, but inwardly they become dry. They lose joy. They lose softness. They lose the ability to feel progress. Eventually, growth starts to feel like punishment. Gratitude brings back a healthier emotional climate. It reminds you that the journey is not only about fixing what is wrong, it is also about seeing what is already meaningful, and that changes your energy. Gratitude is also powerful because it changes how you relate to difficulty. Most people experience pain and ask only, "Why is this happening to me?" That reaction is understandable, but if it becomes your permanent lens, it turns every challenge into bitterness. Gratitude does not remove the hardship, but it asks a stronger question. What is this teaching me? What strength is this forcing me to build? What did this loss reveal that comfort never would? This is not about romanticizing suffering. It is about refusing to waste it. Some of the deepest growth in life comes when pain is turned into wisdom instead of complaint. Gratitude helps make that transformation possible. It allows a person to carry hardship without becoming completely consumed by it. It keeps the heart open while the mind remains honest. It protects you from the poison of resentment. It makes your inner life richer because it teaches you to find value not only in what feels good, but also in what helps you grow. That is why gratitude supports resilience. The grateful person is not blind. They simply do not let difficulty become the only truth they can see. Gratitude also changes relationships. People feel the difference between someone who moves through life entitled and someone who moves through life appreciative. One person treats support as if it is owed. The other recognizes it as a gift. One person notices only what others failed to do. The other notices effort, care, presence, and kindness. Which person becomes easier to love, easier to trust, easier to help? Gratitude deepens connection because it makes people feel seen. It softens pride. It reduces the emotional hunger that makes a person hard to satisfy. It creates warmth. And warmth is not a small thing. It changes the emotional atmosphere around you. It makes your success feel less lonely and your hardship feel less isolating. So how do you practice gratitude without turning it into a cliché? Keep it concrete. Do not only say, "I am grateful for life." Name something specific. The person who stayed. The lesson that changed you. The strength you now have because of what you survived. The chance to begin again. The quiet meal. The body that still works. The chance to learn. The roof above you. The peace of one honest conversation. The simple fact that you are still here and still able to choose differently today. Specific gratitude is stronger than general gratitude because it trains your mind to truly see. You can also practice gratitude during hard seasons by asking, what remains? What is still good? What am I being taught that comfort would never have taught me? Those questions do not erase grief or pressure. They create balance inside them. Think about two people facing a difficult year. One sees only what life took away. Their pain is real, but because that is all they can see. Bitterness begins to grow. The other also hurts, but they keep noticing what remains. The people who love them, the lessons they are learning, the strength they did not know they had, the fact that this season is shaping them. Both are in pain, but one becomes harder and emptier, while the other becomes deeper and steadier. That is the power of gratitude. It does not always change the situation immediately. It changes the person moving through the situation, and that changes more than many people expect. Gratitude also protects ambition from turning toxic. Without gratitude, self-improvement can become endless dissatisfaction. You keep chasing the next level while staying emotionally blind to the good that is already present. But when gratitude is present, ambition becomes cleaner. You still want to grow, but you do not have to hate your current life in order to move forward. You can appreciate today and still build tomorrow. You can be thankful and still hungry in the healthiest sense. That balance matters. It makes growth sustainable. It makes effort less bitter. It keeps your heart alive while your standards rise. So do not underestimate gratitude. It is not a decorative emotion for easy days. It is a form of inner wealth. It teaches you to recognize value, carry hardship with more grace, and keep growing without becoming cruel to yourself. A grateful person is not smaller. They are stronger in a quieter and deeper way. They are harder to break because they are not living from emptiness alone. They know how to see what is good, what is given, and what is still possible. And that kind of person walks through life with a richness no outside success can fully replace. Chapter 10. Your new life begins with what you do today. By now the pattern should be clear. A better life is not created by one emotional promise. It is created by repeated choices that slowly build a stronger person. That is the thread running through everything in this book. First, you were asked to wake up from the fantasy of instant transformation. Then, you were asked to rebuild your foundation by examining your thoughts, your beliefs, and the way you speak. After that, you were asked to take responsibility for your daily discipline, your time, and your learning. Then, you were shown how money and personal growth create upward momentum. And finally, you were brought to purpose and gratitude, so that your progress would not become shallow, scattered, or dry. Different chapters, different angles, different parts of life, but all of them point to the same principle. Your future is not waiting somewhere far away to surprise you one day. It is being built by the way you live now. That is why the goal is not to change everything at once. The goal is to choose what matters most and begin there. Many people lose because they make change too large to carry. They read something true, feel deeply moved, and then make 10 promises in one night. Tomorrow they will wake up earlier, eat perfectly, work harder, save more, read every day, speak better, think better, become calmer, and finally fix everything. But what usually happens next? The weight is too heavy, the system is too vague, the standard is too dramatic to survive ordinary life. So the whole effort breaks and the person concludes that they failed again. But that is not the right conclusion. The problem was not that they were incapable of change. The problem was that they tried to force a total rewrite of their life before building one repeatable line. Real change is humbler than that, but also more reliable. It asks a different question. What is the most important thing I can begin changing now? Not 10 things. 1. Not a heroic action. A real one. Not something I might do in a perfect mood. Something I can actually do today. That is where a new life begins. It begins where clarity meets action. So if you want to start, well, choose the area that is hurting you most or holding you back most. Maybe it is your thinking. Maybe it is your discipline. Maybe it is the way your days keep slipping away. Maybe it is the way you spend money. Maybe it is your lack of direction. Do not choose randomly. Choose honestly. Where is the leak? Where is the friction? Where is the pattern that keeps weakening your life? Then choose one action small enough to begin immediately. If your mind has been defeating you, start by correcting one repeated sentence you say to yourself. If discipline is weak, choose one small habit and keep it for 7 days. If your days are scattered, write down the 3 most important things for tomorrow before you sleep. If money is chaotic, track your spending for 1 week without excuses. If your life feels directionless, spend 10 honest minutes each day asking what really matters to you. Keep the action small, but keep it real. Then, hold it long enough to let repetition do its work. This is where many people quit too early. They expect a small action to feel powerful immediately. But the first job of a small action is not to impress you. Its first job is to become repeatable. Once something becomes repeatable, it begins to shape identity. Once it shapes identity, it begins to change standards. Once standards change, life begins to follow. That is why you must stop demanding perfection from yourself as the price of progress. Perfection is not the entry fee. Responsibility is. You do not need to judge your past all day. You do not need to keep replaying what you should have done differently 5 years ago. You do not need to speak to yourself like a failure in order to become someone stronger. What you need is a more mature relationship with today. Today is where responsibility lives. Today is where trust is rebuilt. Today is where direction becomes visible. Today is where a scattered life begins to gather itself into something steadier. This is the shift from self-blame to self-leadership. Self-blame keeps asking, why am I like this? Self-leadership asks, what is the next right action? Self-blame stares at the mess until it feels even heavier. Self-leadership picks up one piece and starts restoring order. Self-blame wants a different past. Self-leadership takes responsibility for the present. Which one actually builds a future? Not the voice that keeps condemning you. The voice that keeps guiding you. So let this chapter become a decision, not just an ending. Stop asking when the perfect moment will come. Stop assuming your new life begins after you feel ready, after your mood improves, after your schedule clears, or after life becomes easier. Your new life does not begin when everything is finally prepared. It begins when you stop delaying what is right and start doing it today. Maybe in a small way, maybe in an imperfect way, but in a real way. That is enough. One honest step today is worth more than a beautiful fantasy about tomorrow. One repeated action is worth more than one dramatic promise. 1 week of consistency is worth more than one night of emotion. This is how lives rise. Quietly at first, then clearly, then unmistakably. So ask yourself the question that gathers the whole book into one line. What will you improve today, even if it is very small? Your answer to that question matters more than many people realize, because the life you keep hoping for does not begin later. It begins the moment you answer that question honestly and act on it. The most important truth in this book is simple, but it can change everything. Once you truly accept it, your life is the result of what you repeat. Not what you intend once, not what you feel for one night, not what you promise during a moment of inspiration, what you repeat. That is the law behind both progress and decline. That is the reason small actions matter. That is the reason this book keeps returning to the ordinary parts of life. The way you think, the way you speak, the way you use your day, the way you handle discipline. Learning, money, purpose, and gratitude. These are not side issues. They are the quiet builders of a life. The hope this book offers is not the hope of instant transformation. It is stronger than that. It is the hope that you do not need to become perfect before you begin. You do not need to fix everything at once. You do not need to wait for a better season, a better mood, or a better version of yourself to arrive first. You only need enough honesty to see the pattern and enough courage to change one part of it. That is how real lives begin to turn. Small, clear, repeated. So carry one question with you after this book closes. What is tomorrow being built from in the way I live today? That question can wake you up in the best sense. It can pull you back from drift. It can return you to responsibility. It can remind you that every day is not just passing. Every day is voting. Every repeated action is shaping someone. So change what you repeat, and you will begin to see your life change with it.